What happens when an empire built on fear chooses the wrong world to punish? Supreme Commander Athon thinks Charon is weak, frozen, forgotten, and ready to be made an example. But beneath that ice, humanity has buried something the Dominion was never meant to find.
The execution began exactly 17 minutes after the fleet entered orbit, because Supreme Commander Ethon believed fear worked best when delivered quickly. He stood upon the bridge of the Dominion flagship Sovereign Claw and watched the frozen colony world below rotate through darkness beneath him like a dying ember drifting through space. Vast storms crawled across its surface in pale spirals, hiding mountains of black ice and abandoned mining cities buried beneath centuries of snow. According to every report his empire possessed, there were fewer than 80,000 humans remaining on the planet, most of them starving civilians trapped after the collapse of the outer frontier routes years earlier. No warships guarded the colony. No orbital cannons answered the Dominion fleet. No distress signal escaped the system. To Ethon, it looked less like a conquest and more like sanitation. The bridge officers around him clicked their mandibles in satisfaction as thousands of Dominion vessels spread across the upper atmosphere, their shadows swallowing entire glaciers beneath them. The fleet had erased civilizations larger than this one before breakfast cycles. They had burned oceans from planetary crusts. They had cracked moons open to make examples of rebellious species. Humanity, however, carried a reputation that irritated the Dominion High Council in ways statistics could not explain. Humans were difficult to predict, difficult to intimidate. Worse, they inspired resistance in conquered populations merely by surviving. That annoyance was ending today. Begin the demonstration, Ethon ordered calmly. Below the fleet, the old mining city of Charon awakened for the first time in decades as Dominion bombardment engines ignited overhead. Ancient ice towers shattered apart beneath precision orbital strikes, sending avalanches crashing through the ruins. Emergency sirens wailed across empty streets where rusted transport rails vanished beneath snowdrifts taller than buildings. Then the cameras activated. Across hundreds of worlds, billions of viewers watched the live execution feed transmitted by the Dominion Ministry of Compliance. The image focused on 23 kneeling human prisoners dragged into the center of Charon's frozen central plaza. Their wrists were bound with shock chains. Their faces were bruised and bloodied. Snow blew through the shattered remains of statues behind them while armed Dominion soldiers formed a steel circle around the captives. Ethon observed the prisoners carefully. Most species begged at this stage. Humans rarely did. An elderly human woman knelt near the center of the line, her silver hair frozen with ice, her expression strangely calm despite the rifle pressed against the back of her skull. Beside her, a young boy stared upward toward the sky where hundreds of warships hovered like predators waiting to feed. Another prisoner coughed blood into the snow while quietly laughing to himself, as though he understood some private joke no one else could hear. That unsettled Ethon more than he expected. The translator drones floated closer as the commander of the execution squad stepped forward. People of the frontier colonies, the Dominion officer announced across the transmission, witness the cost of resistance. Your species was warned. Your species refused obedience. Now your extinction begins. The prisoners remained silent. No screaming. No pleading. Only the wind. Then the old woman slowly lifted her head and looked directly into the execution camera. And smiled. Not bravely. Not desperately. Knowingly. Ethon felt a faint pressure settle into the bridge atmosphere. The woman's lips moved before the translators could fully process the words. You came into the dark hunting us, she whispered. That was your mistake. The bridge lights flickered once. A minor fluctuation. Nothing more. Then an alarm erupted across the flagship. One of the destroyers positioned above the northern hemisphere vanished from tactical displays without warning. No explosion appeared. No debris field followed. One moment the vessel existed. The next moment it simply disappeared. Bridge officers exchanged confused looks. Ethon straightened slowly. Report. Before anyone answered, a second alarm screamed through the chamber. Another ship had vanished. Then another. Then 5 more. Entire Dominion warships were disappearing from orbit in total silence. No weapon signatures. No energy spikes. Nothing. Panic began spreading through the bridge crew as tactical displays malfunctioned under a storm of emergency signals. Officers shouted over one another while fleet formations broke apart across the holographic map. Long-range scanners searched desperately for hidden enemies and found only empty space surrounding the colony world below. But the ships kept vanishing. A transmission suddenly forced itself onto every channel simultaneously. Static flooded the bridge. Then breathing. Human breathing. Slow. Patient. Ethan felt something unfamiliar crawl beneath his armored skin as a distorted voice emerged from the speakers. You should have stayed afraid of us. The transmission ended. At that exact moment, the execution plaza cameras tilted upward toward the sky. And for the first time, the Dominion fleet saw what had been hiding beneath the ice of Karen Colony the entire time. At first, the Dominion commanders believed the images from Karen were sensor corruption caused by atmospheric interference. That explanation lasted exactly 11 seconds before the fourth battlecruiser vanished. The frozen surface beneath the execution plaza began to split apart in long glowing fractures that stretched across the city like cracks forming through black glass. Entire streets trembled violently. Towers buried beneath centuries of ice erupted upward through the snow in showers of steam and shattered steel, revealing structures far older and far larger than any colonial mining installation should have possessed. Beneath Karen Colony, hidden under kilometers of frozen rock and dead infrastructure, something enormous had been waiting. And it was waking up. The execution feed cut abruptly as a deafening pulse rolled through the atmosphere. Dominion dropships stalled midair and fell from the sky like stones. Orbital targeting systems failed simultaneously across 70% of the fleet. Then came the real terror. Thousands of heat signatures appeared beneath the ice all at once. Human. Not civilians. Soldiers. Ethan stared at the tactical displays in disbelief as entire sectors of Karen lit up crimson with movement. The numbers climbed too fast to process. 10,000. 20,000. 40,000. It was impossible. Every Dominion intelligence report had confirmed the colony was dying long before the invasion fleet arrived. Supply routes had collapsed decades ago. Population scans showed almost no industrial activity. There should not have been enough life on that world to sustain a resistance force for even a month. Yet buried beneath the ice was an army. No human civilization could hide this many assets unnoticed, one of the bridge analysts whispered. Ethan said nothing, because somewhere beneath his growing anger, another thought had begun forming. The humans had known the Dominion was coming. The realization settled over him slowly, like poison entering blood. This was not a colony caught unprepared. This was bait.
So far, Athon came to Charon expecting a helpless colony, but the execution failed. Ships vanished without warning, and the prisoners were extracted before the Dominion even understood what was happening. Now, the truth is terrifying. This was never a rescue mission, never a rebellion, never a mistake. Charon was a bait, and the Dominion has already stepped into the trap.
The first counterattack struck 3 minutes later. Dominion assault carriers descending toward the surface suddenly lost communication with orbital command as massive rail batteries erupted from beneath the glaciers surrounding Karen. The hidden weapons fired in complete silence, their magnetic rounds punching through warship armor with such force that entire carriers tore apart before crews even understood they were under attack. Burning debris rained across the atmosphere while Dominion fighters scrambled desperately for targets they could not lock onto. Then the human transmissions began. Not military frequencies. Civilian channels. Emergency broadcasts. Open communications hijacked across the fleet. A woman's voice echoed through every Dominion speaker system at once, calm and almost conversational. You studied us for 12 years, she said. You mapped our trade lanes. You infiltrated our colonies. You calculated our psychology and predicted our surrender thresholds. Another Dominion cruiser vanished from orbit. But you never asked why humanity abandoned the frontier. Ethan slammed one clawed fist against the command platform. Trace the transmission. We cannot, Supreme Commander. The signal is moving. How? We do not know. Below the fleet, Karen transformed into war. The frozen wasteland exploded with movement as concealed hangars opened across the mountains surrounding the colony basin. Human aircraft surged upward through blizzards and ash clouds, their hulls painted matte black against the storm. Dominion patrol ships attempted interception runs only to fly directly into fields of buried anti-orbital mines hidden beneath the upper atmosphere. Explosions spread across the sky in violent chains, illuminating the ice fields with flashes of blue fire. On the surface, the surviving human prisoners from the execution plaza disappeared into the chaos. Ethan noticed that detail immediately. No bodies remained. No blood. No signs of panic. The prisoners had not escaped. They had been extracted, which meant the humans had known the exact second the executions would begin. A Dominion intelligence officer approached cautiously from behind the command platform. "Supreme Commander, there is more." Ethan turned. The officer's compound eyes trembled visibly. "We recovered archived records from abandoned frontier networks after entering the system. Most were heavily encrypted, but one phrase repeats across all recovered data." The officer hesitated before continuing. "If the stars ever come hunting again, send them to Karen." Silence spread across the bridge. For the first time since entering the system, Ethan felt uncertainty moving through his officers like infection. He hated uncertainty. "Deploy the hunter divisions," he ordered coldly. "I want every underground structure located and every surviving human executed." "Yes, Supreme Commander." The fleet responded instantly. Thousands of Dominion shock troops descended through the atmosphere in armored drop capsules, smashing into the frozen surface around the city. Heavy mechanized units followed behind them, each one designed specifically for urban suppression warfare. The Dominion had crushed resistance movements on 41 worlds using these same tactics. Overwhelming force. Rapid terror deployment. Total communication blackout. By all known metrics, the rebellion should have collapsed within hours. Instead, the snow began killing them. The first distress calls came from the eastern glacier fields. Entire patrol squads vanished while marching through empty terrain. Sensor drones found only blood trails leading into blizzard conditions no Dominion soldier could navigate properly. Then came the audio recordings recovered from damaged helmets. Human whispers drifting through static. Footsteps circling in darkness. Screams cut short halfway through transmission. One recording disturbed the fleet officers more than the others. A Dominion captain stood inside an abandoned mining corridor alongside 20 armed soldiers. The thermal feed showed no movement beyond the unit. No heat signatures. No life forms nearby. Yet something was breathing inside the walls. The captain demanded visual confirmation repeatedly while his soldiers rotated nervously toward every shadow. Then the lights failed. The audio continued for another 30 seconds. Gunfire erupted first. Then screaming. Then silence. When the emergency lights returned, the corridor was empty except for blood covering the floor and one message carved into the metal wall behind them. "We learned war from extinction." Ethan replayed the recording 3 times. The handwriting looked fresh. Human. Deliberate. Almost patient. Another officer rushed toward the command platform before he could process the implication fully. "Supreme Commander, new contacts emerging beyond the outer asteroid belt." "How many?" The officer swallowed hard. "Unknown. Their signatures do not match any registered human fleet configuration." Ethan looked back toward the frozen world below, where fires now spread across the glaciers like veins glowing beneath skin. The humans were still transmitting across Dominion frequencies, but the voice had changed again. No threats now. No warnings. Only one sentence repeated calmly through every intercepted channel. "You still think this is a colony?" Then the transmission ended. And deep beneath the ice of Karen, something enormous began moving toward the surface. The thing beneath Karen rose slowly enough to terrify them. At first, the Dominion fleet mistook it for tectonic instability caused by underground detonations. Entire mountain ranges along the northern hemisphere began trembling in rhythmic pulses while deep fractures spread across the ice fields for hundreds of kilometers. Then the glaciers started collapsing inward, not outward, as though something unimaginably massive was pushing upward from beneath the planet's crust. Ethan watched in silence from the bridge as orbital scans struggled to map the structure emerging below. Every calculation failed. The object was too large, too dense, too old, and unmistakably human. Then the ice finally broke apart. A colossal ring-shaped structure erupted from beneath the frozen wasteland in a storm of shattered glaciers and black steam. Ancient metallic spires unfolded toward the sky like the ribs of some sleeping mechanical beast awakening after centuries underground. Dominion Tactical Systems immediately attempted classification and returned the same answer across every terminal aboard the fleet. Unknown human construction. The phrase spread visible discomfort across the bridge. Humanity was not supposed to possess unknown technologies. The Dominion had spent decades infiltrating human systems, studying military doctrines, dissecting captured equipment, bribing frontier governors, and monitoring fleet production. They knew humanity's naval capabilities. They knew their weapon limitations. They knew their political fractures. Or at least they thought they did. Ethan narrowed his eyes as energy signatures rippled across the giant ring beneath the ice. What is it? No one answered. Because no one knew. Far below the surface, hidden deep inside the awakening structure, Commander Elias Vorn finally opened his eyes. The chambers surrounding him hummed with cold white light as ancient systems reactivated one by one around the massive underground complex. Frost evaporated from the black armor resting across his shoulders while dormant tactical displays illuminated the darkness with streams of encrypted battlefield data. Hundreds of human operatives moved throughout the chamber in disciplined silence, their faces scarred by years of survival inside the frozen world above. No insignias marked their uniforms. No flags hung from the walls. The old nations of Earth meant little here. Only survival mattered on Karen. A young communications officer approached Vorn carefully. Dominion Hunter divisions have entered sectors 7 through 12. Civilian extraction completed. Orbital fleet destabilizing faster than predicted. Vorn stood slowly. The scars running along his hands caught the pale light as he secured the magnetic gauntlet around his wrist. How long until they realize what Karen really is? The officer hesitated. Not long. Vorn nodded once, almost to himself. Good. He began walking through the chamber while tactical projections flickered around him in holographic layers. Some displayed Dominion fleet formations. Others showed active resistance cells awakening across neighboring systems. But one projection remained isolated from the others. A map. Not of Karen. Not even of human territory. A map of the entire outer galaxy covered in red markers. War zones. Mass graves. Extinct civilizations. And beneath them all, one classified phrase burned in white text. Project Gravekeeper. Vorn stopped staring at it only when another alarm activated inside the chamber. The Dominion had launched hunter squads underground. Seal the lower corridors, he ordered calmly, and release the shadows. The younger officers nearby exchanged uneasy looks. Even among Karen's defenders, the shadows carried reputation more than identity. Most had never seen them directly. Only rumors survived. Stories whispered among resistance fighters about humans trained in places too brutal for conventional armies. Men and women who fought without signals, without lights, without hesitation. Soldiers shaped by extinction-level warfare until fear itself became instinctively weaponized. The Dominion learned about them 3 minutes later. Deep beneath the glaciers, armored hunter squads advanced through abandoned tunnel systems using thermal scanners and motion trackers calibrated to detect human life signs. The Dominion considered themselves masters of subterranean warfare. They had purged hive cities beneath ocean worlds and exterminated insurgencies hidden under volcanic crusts. Darkness belonged to them. At least until the lights failed. One hunter captain immediately ordered defensive formation while emergency optics activated across his unit. Narrow corridors stretched around them in red emergency glow, revealing rusted mining rails disappearing deeper underground. Steam drifted from overhead pipes in soft hissing bursts. Then came the sound. Not footsteps. Breathing. Close. The Dominion soldiers rotated instantly toward the source, pulse rifles raised. Nothing stood there. The breathing stopped. One of the soldiers lowered his weapon slightly. That was when the ceiling opened above them. The attack lasted 9 seconds. Helmet recordings later recovered from the tunnels showed fragments of impossible movement. Black armored figures dropping silently through darkness. Blades punching through combat plating faster than Dominion targeting systems could track. Entire soldiers dragged upward into ventilation shafts before they could scream. The last surviving hunter managed to fire exactly one shot before a distorted human voice whispered near his ear. "You came looking for monsters." The transmission ended in static and blood. Back on the Sovereign Claw, Ethan felt the psychological balance of the invasion beginning to shift in ways no military doctrine had prepared him for. Dominion soldiers were no longer discussing victory probabilities. They were discussing survival. That was dangerous. Fear spread quickly among conquerors and used to feeling hunted. A senior intelligence advisor approached the command platform carrying recovered historical archives from forbidden human networks. "Supreme Commander, we found references to Karen in pre-war military records." "Explain." The advisor activated the holographic display with visibly shaking claws. Ancient human documents filled the air around them, heavily censored and fragmented. Most files were corrupted beyond recognition, but one sentence appeared repeatedly across every surviving archive. Karen was never a colony. Ethan stared at the words. Another file opened beside it. Project Gravekeeper initiated following the fall of Earth Sector 9. Then another. In event of external invasion, Karen Protocol authorized without oversight. The advisor swallowed hard before continuing. "We believe the humans intentionally erased this installation from their own public records centuries ago." "Why?" The advisor hesitated too long. That alone answered the question. Meanwhile, beyond the outer asteroid belt, the unidentified contacts finally emerged from deep space. At first, Dominion long-range scanners counted 17 vessels. Then 30. Then hundreds. The fleet signatures flickered unnaturally, as though the ships themselves were phasing between detectable states. Some appeared heavily damaged. Others looked ancient beyond comprehension. Several matched no known human ship design ever recorded by the Dominion Empire. But what truly unsettled the bridge crew was their formation. They were not advancing toward Karen defensively. They were surrounding the system, as though trapping something inside. Ethan felt cold realization creeping slowly into his thoughts. The Dominion had come believing humanity was weak enough to exterminate. But every passing hour revealed another horrifying possibility. Humanity had not been hiding from the galaxy. Humanity had been containing itself. The first Dominion world died 73 hours after the invasion of Karen began. Not conquered. Not occupied. Silenced. The colony moon of Varus Prime stopped transmitting in the middle of a routine military broadcast. One moment its orbital defenses operated normally. The next moment every communication channel dissolved into static. Surveillance drones sent to investigate found the defense grid still active, the cities still illuminated, the factories still running. But there were no life signs anywhere. 28 million Dominion citizens had vanished without a trace. No wreckage. No battle. No bodies. Only one message remained burning across the moon's primary communication tower in massive human lettering visible from orbit. "We remembered first." When the report reached the bridge of the Sovereign Claw, silence spread through the chamber like disease. No officer spoke immediately. Even the tactical analysts stopped moving. Ethan read the report twice before setting it aside. "Fabrication," one of the advisors muttered weakly. "Psychological warfare." "Perhaps," Ethan replied calmly. But he no longer believed that, because Dominion fleets were beginning to disappear far beyond Karen now. Supply convoys entering frontier sectors never arrived at their destinations. Listening stations fell dark one after another. Entire patrol groups vanished inside regions previously marked secure. Something was spreading outward from Karen through Dominion territory with terrifying precision. And the humans still had not shown their full strength. That was the worst part. Every military instinct Ethan possessed told him humanity should already be exhausted. No species could sustain operations across the scale after decades of decline and political collapse. Yet every Dominion offensive encountered deeper resistance than the last. Human operatives appeared inside secured facilities before disappearing again like ghosts. Fleets emerged from hidden space corridors no intelligence network had ever mapped. Entire worlds previously categorized as abandoned suddenly activated defense systems older than some Dominion civilizations. The invasion was no longer proceeding incorrectly. The invasion was unraveling reality itself. Supreme Commander, an intelligence officer interrupted carefully, we intercepted a classified transmission between resistance cells near Earth. Ethan looked up sharply. The human homeworld had remained strangely quiet since the conflict began. That alone disturbed him more than open resistance would have. Human colonies burned across the frontier, secret fleets emerged from hiding, and ancient war systems awakened beneath frozen planets. Yet Earth itself remained silent. Too silent. Play it. The transmission crackled through the bridge speakers immediately. Gunfire echoed faintly in the background while a wounded human voice spoke rapidly through static. Repeat, hunter fleets confirmed entering Sol approach lanes. Gravekeeper cells collapsing across sectors 12 through 19. We need authorization immediately. Another voice answered. No authorization yet. They're deploying extinction protocols. I know. If Earth waits any longer. The transmission cut abruptly. Ethan felt something tighten beneath his armored chest. Hunter fleets. Extinction protocols. And Earth was waiting for something. Before he could process further, another officer rushed toward the command platform in visible panic. Supreme Commander, incoming fleet signatures exiting fold space directly above Karen. The tactical displays exploded with alerts. Hundreds of Dominion warships emerged from hyperspace around the frozen world, their black hulls stretching across orbit in endless formation lines. At the center of the arriving armada floated 3 colossal vessels larger than cities themselves, their armor etched with crimson conquest markings recognized instantly across the galaxy. The Vorkale Ascendancy. The Supreme Hunter Fleet. For over 4 centuries, the Ascendancy had served as the Dominion's final answer to impossible wars. They did not invade planets. They erased civilizations. Entire species disappeared after the Ascendancy arrived, their histories reduced to ash before neighboring systems even learned conflict had begun. And leading them was High Executor Malvek. Ethan had fought beside Malvek only once before during the extermination of the Veari hives. He remembered the silence afterward most clearly. Entire continents burned beneath orbit while Malvek observed without expression, calculating casualty ratios as calmly as weather patterns. Malvek did not fear enemies. That made what happened next impossible. The transmission from the Ascendancy arrived immediately upon entering orbit. Malvek's massive armored form appeared above the bridge holograms, his scarred face illuminated by dim red command lights. Ethan, he said quietly. Why was I not informed this system contained Gravekeeper architecture? The bridge officers exchanged confused looks. Ethan narrowed his eyes. You recognize the designation? Malvek did not answer immediately. And for the first time in recorded Dominion history, Ethan saw uncertainty in the High Executor's eyes. Seal all fleet exits, Malvek ordered instead. No ship leaves this system without authorization from the Ascendancy. You believe the humans are attempting escape? No, Malvek replied. The pause afterward chilled the bridge. I believe they wanted us trapped here. Before Ethan could demand clarification, alarms detonated across every tactical station aboard the Sovereign Claw. Explosions erupted simultaneously across Dominion supply stations orbiting Karen's outer moons. Human sabotage teams appeared inside secured shipyards, destroying fuel reserves and communication relays before vanishing again into darkness. Entire docking sectors lost gravity stabilization. Panic spread through the fleet as hidden infiltrators struck command centers faster than Dominion security could respond. Then came the real blow. The Ascendancy itself suffered breach alerts. Human operatives had somehow infiltrated the Supreme Hunter fleet before its arrival. Impossible. Ethan watched in disbelief as internal security footage streamed across tactical displays. Dominion elites armed with plasma rifles swept through darkened corridors aboard the Ascendancy while emergency lights flashed crimson overhead. Bodies littered the decks already. Then the footage caught one of the infiltrators clearly. Human. Black combat armor. No insignia. The operative paused beside a dying Dominion officer and leaned close enough for helmet cameras to capture distorted audio. "You still think this war started on Karen?" the human whispered. Then the feed cut to static. Hours later, while chaos spread through the fleet, Ethan finally received the classified files Malvec had withheld from him. Ancient Dominion records. Forbidden military archives sealed for centuries. The first file opened with a single sentence. "Do not engage humanity if Gravekeeper facilities remain active." Ethan's pulse slowed. Another file followed. Human civilization previously classified as containment species. Then the final archive opened. The oldest recording dated back nearly 900 years. A dying Dominion emperor appeared on screen surrounded by burning command chambers. Blood covered his armor while alarms screamed somewhere beyond the recording. His final warning echoed through the bridge in broken static. If the humans ever return to full war state, the galaxy itself will become the battlefield. The recording ended. And deep beneath Karen, buried below the awakening machine city beneath the ice, Commander Elias Vorn finally received the message he had waited his entire life to hear. Earth had authorized release. Not of weapons. Of humanity itself. The order reached every hidden human network in the galaxy within 6 seconds. No speeches followed it. No patriotic declarations. No celebration. Only 3 words transmitted through dead frequencies, abandoned satellites, encrypted resistance channels, and forgotten military relays buried beneath ruined worlds. Gravekeeper status, lifted. Across the bridge of the Sovereign Claw, Dominion systems immediately began malfunctioning harder than before. Long-range scanners flickered with impossible readings while tactical maps filled with unidentified fleet movements spreading across multiple sectors simultaneously. Entire star systems previously listed as inactive suddenly awakened with bursts of energy large enough to blind sensor arrays. Human worlds. Not colonies. Fortresses. Ethan stared at the tactical projections in growing disbelief as dormant shipyards emerged from asteroid belts thought abandoned for centuries. Ancient orbital rings activated around dead planets. Massive weapons platforms unfolded from beneath gas giant atmospheres where they had remained hidden in silence for generations. Humanity had not been rebuilding after defeat. Humanity had been waiting. How many hidden installations are there? Ethan demanded. No one answered immediately because the estimates climbing across Dominion intelligence displays bordered on madness. Thousands of encrypted locations were activating across the frontier faster than analysts could catalog them. Entire sectors once believed strategically irrelevant now revealed layered defense systems older than the Dominion Empire itself. Then the worst realization arrived. The humans had hidden these assets from their own civilian populations too. Not even humanity fully knew what humanity possessed. On Karen, Commander Elias Vorn walked through the depths of the awakening machine city while ancient systems roared back to life around him. Massive underground chambers stretched endlessly beneath the ice, filled with dormant warships suspended inside vertical launch vaults large enough to contain cities. Automated factories began producing weapons immediately as assembly lines untouched for centuries ignited beneath pale industrial lights. The deeper levels had remained sealed until now. Even most Gravekeeper operatives never knew they existed. A young resistance officer followed beside Vorn, visibly shaken by the scale of the hidden complex. "How long was all this here?" "Long before I was born," Vorn replied. "Who built it?" Vorn looked toward the distant launch chambers where colossal black vessels slowly descended from sealing docks. "Survivors." The officer frowned. From what? Vorn did not answer directly. Because humanity rarely spoke openly about the first silence. Most citizens knew fragments of the story. Ancient alien wars. The collapse of early interstellar expansion. The sudden disappearance of humanity from galactic politics nearly 6 centuries earlier. Official records claimed humanity retreated inward after devastating economic collapse and political fragmentation. That was the lie. The truth remained buried beneath military black sites and erased archives because the truth frightened even humans. Humanity had not withdrawn from the galaxy voluntarily. Humanity had been hunted. Entire worlds burned during the first silence. Early colonies vanished overnight beneath orbital bombardments carried out by a coalition of older galactic powers terrified by what humanity was becoming. Not because humans possessed superior technology, but because humans adapted too quickly. Every war humanity survived made them deadlier. Every defeat accelerated their evolution. Every extinction attempt unified them harder than diplomacy ever could. While other species stabilized after reaching interstellar civilization, humanity transformed continuously through conflict. That terrified the galaxy enough to unite it against them. So humanity vanished. Or rather, humanity pretended to vanish. The surviving governments dismantled visible military expansion, fractured themselves publicly, abandoned outer territories, and buried their most dangerous technologies beneath hidden installations like Karen. Humanity intentionally allowed itself to appear weak because every simulation predicted the same outcome. If the galaxy believed humans remained dangerous, extermination would continue until Earth itself died. So humanity became smaller, softer, distracted, all while the Gravekeeper Initiative prepared for the inevitable day another empire would make the same mistake again. And now the Dominion had. Back aboard the Ascendancy, High Executor Malvek reviewed the recovered historical archives in silence while Dominion officers argued around him in panic. Entire fleets were retreating without orders. Frontier governors demanded emergency reinforcements. Conquered species across Dominion territory had begun open rebellion after intercepted reports of human victories spread through civilian networks. The Empire's fear was becoming contagious. A strategist approached Malvek cautiously. Executor, we still possess superior numbers. If we deploy the Planet Killer Array against Earth immediately, we may destabilize their command structure before these hidden fleets consolidate. Malvek looked up slowly. You still misunderstand them. The strategist stiffened. Malvek activated one of the recovered historical recordings above the war table. Ancient footage flickered into existence showing burning human cities from centuries earlier while alien warships bombarded entire continents from orbit. Millions died beneath the firestorms. But the footage continued. The humans did not surrender. Even after losing oceans. Even after famine consumed entire systems. Even after their governments collapsed. The humans kept fighting. Not for victory anymore. For memory. Malvek closed the recording. Every species fears extinction, he said quietly. Humans are the first species I have ever seen that learned how to survive it. Before the strategist could respond, emergency alarms erupted through the Ascendancy. But this time the attack came from inside Dominion space itself. One after another, heavily fortified prison worlds began broadcasting emergency distress signals across military channels. Conquered civilizations previously crushed by the Dominion were revolting simultaneously. Human operatives had infiltrated detention systems for years, secretly organizing resistance networks across occupied worlds while the Empire focused entirely on controlling humanity. The Dominion had not invaded one species. They had awakened all the others. A transmission suddenly forced itself across every command frequency in the system. Commander Elias Vorn appeared on screen for the first time. No helmet. No distortion. Just a tired-looking human standing inside the depths of Karen while alarms echoed faintly behind him. A long scar crossed one side of his face, disappearing beneath the collar of his black combat armor. You spent decades studying us, Vorn said calmly. You watched our politics. Our divisions. Our entertainment. our collapsing colonies. You saw a species exhausted by its own history. Behind him, massive warships continued rising through underground launch shafts toward the surface. And you thought exhaustion meant weakness. Ethan stepped toward the transmission. What are you? For the first time, Vorn smiled slightly. Not proudly. Not arrogantly. Almost sadly. We are what survived the last time the galaxy tried to erase us. The transmission shifted suddenly to another image. Not the crowded, shining world Dominion intelligence expected. The oceans were covered in moving fleet formations stretching beyond the horizon. Orbital defense rings surrounded the planet in thousands of layers. Entire continents glowed with awakening military infrastructure hidden beneath civilian megacities for centuries. And slowly, terrifyingly, the moon itself began opening. Massive sections of its surface split apart mechanically, revealing something hidden inside the lunar core. A weapon. A shipyard. Ethan felt genuine fear for the first time in his existence. Because he finally understood the scale of the deception. Humanity had never rebuilt after extinction. Humanity had rebuilt for the next one. The moon launched its first warship 12 minutes later. Every Dominion sensor array focused instantly on the massive structure emerging from the shattered lunar surface while emergency calculations flooded tactical displays across the fleet. The vessel dwarfed conventional human cruisers so completely that analysts initially classified it as a mobile fortress rather than a ship. Entire sections of the lunar crust peeled away as more colossal hulls rose slowly into orbit beneath pillars of white fire. Then another ship emerged. Then 12 more. The Dominion bridge crews stopped speaking entirely. Ancient black vessels poured from the hollow moon in endless silence, their armor scarred with marks of wars fought centuries before most modern empires even existed. These were not polished parade fleets built for intimidation. These were survival ships. Weapons engineered during humanity's extinction era when efficiency mattered more than beauty and victory mattered more than morality. Humanity's hidden fleet had been sleeping inside its own moon for generations. And now it was awake. Across Dominion-controlled systems, panic accelerated into collapse. Military governors demanded immediate retreat authorization while civilian worlds rioted openly after intercepted footage of the lunar shipyards spread through underground networks. Conquered species long crushed beneath Dominion rule began attacking occupation forces simultaneously. Some painted human symbols across liberated cities before they even understood what those symbols originally meant. Hope spread faster than fear ever could. That realization terrified the Dominion High Command more than the fleets themselves. Because empires survived military defeats. They did not survive losing psychological control. On Charon, the ice storms intensified as launch operations accelerated beneath the surface. Commander Elias Vorn stood inside the upper command spire overlooking the frozen wasteland while tactical projections updated continuously around him. Human fleets emerging from hidden sectors were now engaging Dominion supply routes across nearly a third of known space. Entire hyperspace corridors collapsed under coordinated sabotage strikes. Still, Vorn did not look satisfied. A resistance officer approached him cautiously. Reports from Sol confirm the Ascendancy has entered Earth's outer defense perimeter. The Planet Killer Array is charging. Vorn remained silent for several seconds. How long? Estimated firing capability in 7 hours. Too soon. The words settled heavily through the command chamber because everyone present understood the implication. Humanity's hidden networks had survived long enough to destabilize the Dominion, but destabilization alone would not save Earth. The Ascendancy still possessed extinction-level weaponry capable of sterilizing entire planets. If the array fired successfully, billions would die before humanity's hidden fleets fully consolidated. And there was something worse. The forbidden systems beneath Earth were beginning to activate. Vorn turned slowly toward the tactical map displaying the Sol system. Layers of encrypted warning symbols pulsed across the projection around Earth itself, each one marked with clearance restrictions so severe that most Gravekeeper operatives had never even seen them before today. A younger officer noticed his expression. Sir, what happens if Earth deploys the old systems? No one else in the chamber spoke, because everyone already knew fragments of the answer. The old systems were why the first silence happened. Humanity's extinction wars had forced scientists, soldiers, and governments into corners no civilization was meant to survive psychologically. In those final desperate years, humanity created technologies so catastrophic that even victory became morally poisonous afterward. Entire research programs vanished from official history because the surviving leadership feared what humanity might become if those weapons were ever normalized. Most were dismantled. Some were buried. A few remained sleeping beneath earth, waiting. Vorn finally answered quietly. If the old systems fully activate, humanity survives. The officer frowned. That sounds like good news. Vorn looked toward the projection again. It depends what survives. Far above Karen, the war intensified brutally. Dominion hunter fleets launched relentless assaults against the frozen planet while hidden human defense platforms emerged continuously from beneath the ice. Entire orbital battles unfolded inside blizzard conditions thick enough to blind targeting systems. Human pilots flew directly through debris storms and burning wreckage with terrifying precision, often sacrificing their own ships merely to cripple Dominion carriers long enough for resistance bombers to strike. The Dominion began adapting quickly. That made them dangerous again. High Executor Malvec understood now that conventional suppression tactics would fail against humanity. Fear did not stop humans once survival instincts activated at species scale. If anything, suffering unified them harder. So Malvec abandoned intimidation entirely. He switched to extermination. The Ascendancy unleashed its first sterilization strike against a rebellious frontier world 3 systems from Karen. Millions died instantly beneath atmospheric ignition bombardment while emergency broadcasts transmitted the destruction live across nearby sectors. Dominion fleets repeated the tactic on 2 more worlds within hours. The message was simple: submit or burn. For a brief moment, the terror worked. Some resistance cells retreated underground again. Civilian evacuations overwhelmed human logistics networks. Several liberated systems surrendered preemptively rather than risk annihilation. Then humanity responded. A Dominion prison moon near the galactic core suddenly lost gravity stabilization across all major facilities. Occupation fleets arriving to investigate discovered the moon's entire prison population already freed. More than 9 million surviving prisoners from conquered species now controlled the installation alongside human operatives. And orbiting above the liberated moon floated a single human warship. Motionless. Broadcasting continuously across every Dominion frequency. The message came from a human medic covered in blood-stained evacuation armor. "You think killing civilians scares us into obedience," she said quietly. "But extinction is the first thing the galaxy ever taught humanity." Behind her stood survivors from dozens of species once enslaved by the Dominion. "We learned something important afterward." The camera shifted toward the stars where more human fleets emerged from fold space behind her. "The dead only make us harder to stop." The transmission spread across the galaxy within the hour. So did the rebellions. Meanwhile, inside the Sol system, the Ascendancy crossed Mars' orbit. Earth's hidden defense rings opened fire immediately. Thousands of magnetic cannons illuminated the void between planets while automated drone swarms crashed against Dominion formations in endless waves. Entire sectors of space vanished beneath overlapping bombardments powerful enough to crack moons apart. Still the Ascendancy advanced. Relentless. Inevitable. At the center of the formation, the planet killer array continued charging. Deep beneath Earth's surface, alarms echoed through sealed military vaults untouched for centuries while ancient reactors awakened one by one below the oceans. Government officials argued violently inside underground command bunkers as casualty projections climbed toward extinction thresholds. Some demanded activation. Others called it madness. One elderly admiral finally silenced the chamber with a single sentence: "If we use the old systems, there may not be a humanity left afterward worth saving." No one disagreed, because the classified files all described the same horrifying possibility. The forbidden systems did not merely weaponize technology. they weaponized humanity itself. And above Earth, as the Ascendancy closed toward firing range, the first activation sequence finally began. The activation started with the oceans. Across Earth, coastlines began glowing beneath the night sky as enormous geometric patterns illuminated far below the waterline. Entire seas churned violently while ancient structures rose from the abyss like sleeping titans waking beneath the waves. Civilian populations watched in confusion and terror as massive black towers emerged across every ocean simultaneously, stretching kilometers into the atmosphere before locking into position around the planet. Then the screaming began. Not from the streets. From the military channels. Every human soldier connected to Earth's defense grid collapsed to their knees as the first neural synchronization pulse spread through the system. Pilots clutched their helmets in agony. Fleet commanders staggered inside burning bridges while blood streamed from their noses and ears. Millions of minds suddenly touched one another for the briefest fraction of a second. And felt everything. Fear, grief, rage, plus. Every death humanity had suffered since the Dominion invasion slammed through the network in one overwhelming tidal wave of emotion. The synchronization stopped almost immediately. But nothing about the humans remained the same afterward. On the bridge of the Sovereign Claw, Dominion analysts stared in visible horror at the tactical aftermath. Human fleet coordination had become instantaneous. Ships separated across millions of kilometers maneuvered with impossible precision as though controlled by a single consciousness. Fighter squadrons reacted before Dominion targeting systems even fired. Resistance cells launched synchronized assaults without communications. It looked less like strategy and more like instinct. "What did they do?" one officer whispered. No one answered. Because the Dominion sensors were detecting impossible biological activities spreading across human forces. Adrenal responses elevated beyond survivable thresholds. Neural activity accelerating violently. Emotional centers hyperstimulated far beyond normal cognitive limits. The humans were burning themselves alive from the inside. And somehow becoming more dangerous because of it. Far beneath Earth's surface, inside the oldest Gravekeeper vault ever constructed, Commander Elias Vorn entered the chamber humanity had spent 6 centuries trying to forget existed. The room was enormous. Cold. Silent. Thousands of suspension capsules stretched endlessly through the darkness around him, each one containing a sleeping human figure suspended beneath dim white light. Men and women. Young and old. Soldiers from another age. The last warborn. Humanity's extinction generation. Vorn walked slowly between the capsules while old military insignias flickered faintly across the glass. These soldiers were not legends. Not myths. They were survivors. The first humans transformed by the neural war systems during the extinction era. The first generation forced to fight wars where entire planetary populations shared pain, memory, and tactical awareness through synchronized combat networks. The first generation that stopped thinking like individuals during battle. Most never recovered afterward. Humanity buried them here because awakening them again meant admitting desperation beyond civilization itself. A voice echoed quietly through the chamber. "You finally ran out of options." Vorn stopped walking. One of the capsules near the center of the vault had opened. A woman stepped slowly from the fading suspension mist, her gray hair hanging loose around armor older than most nations. Scars covered nearly every visible inch of her skin. Her eyes carried the hollow stillness of someone who had survived too much for too long. General Lyra Kane. One of the last living architects of the First Silence. Vorn straightened instinctively despite himself. Kane noticed. "That reflex still exists," she murmured. "Interesting." Alarms echoed faintly above them while distant bombardments shook dust from the vault ceiling. "The Ascendancy is nearing firing range," Vorn said carefully. "I know. We may lose Earth." Kane looked toward the sleeping warborn capsules stretching endlessly through the chamber. "You already lost Earth," she replied quietly, "the moment humanity activated the network again." Meanwhile, above the planet, the war reached catastrophic scale. The Ascendancy breached Earth's second orbital ring after 6 straight hours of non-stop combat. Thousands of wrecks burned across near space while debris storms engulfed entire sectors around the planet. Human fleets fought with terrifying coordination now, often sacrificing themselves without hesitation to protect civilian evacuation corridors. But the Dominion kept advancing. The planet killer array continued charging. And Earth was running out of time. Then the moon exploded. At least that was what billions believed at first. A massive shockwave erupted across lunar orbit as one of the Ascendancy's primary bombardment lances struck the surface directly. Entire sections of the moon shattered outward into space while burning debris rained across surrounding fleets. Human defense formations collapsed momentarily beneath the impact. Celebrations spread briefly through Dominion command channels. Until the fragments started moving. Ethan watched in stunned silence as shattered sections of the moon rotated unnaturally through space before unfolding mechanically beneath layers of broken crust. Massive hidden weapons platforms emerged from inside the debris field while dormant fleet batteries activated across the fractured lunar remains. The moon had not been destroyed. It had opened completely. Thousands of hidden warships surged from within the fractured satellite like predators escaping a cage while colossal magnetic arrays locked onto the Ascendancy simultaneously. Entire Dominion formations disappeared beneath coordinated firepower so overwhelming that even battle-hardened officers froze watching it happen. And still the humans kept coming. Burning ships rammed Dominion carriers deliberately. Boarding craft crashed through armored hulls without slowing. Civilians joined evacuation defense lines armed with anything capable of firing. Ethan finally understood the truth then. Humanity was no longer fighting to win. Humanity was fighting to make extinction impossible. That realization arrived seconds before emergency alarms detonated across the Sovereign Claw. "Supreme Commander," a tactical officer screamed. Unauthorized activation detected beneath Earth's surface. The bridge displays flickered violently. Then every human ship in the system stopped moving at once. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. And during those 4 seconds, every human mind connected to the neural war network felt the same thing simultaneously. Something ancient waking up beneath Earth. Something humanity itself feared. Deep inside the Gravekeeper vault, General Lyra Kane looked upward slowly as the floor trembled beneath her boots. Then she whispered the words Vorn had dreaded his entire life. They activated the Harbinger. Across the Sol system, all human transmissions ceased instantly. Then a new signal emerged from Earth itself. One voice. Not mechanical. Human. And impossibly calm. "We asked the galaxy to leave us alone." The stars around Earth began going dark.
Humanity's secret is finally unfolding. Charon was not a colony. Earth was not silent. The moon was not just a moon. And the Harbinger is now awake. The Dominion came to erase humanity. But now the battlefield itself is changing around Earth. And the question is no longer whether humanity can survive. It is what humanity might become if pushed too far.
At first, the Dominion believed their sensors were failing again. Entire sections of space surrounding Earth vanished from long-range detection as though swallowed by some invisible distortion field spreading outward from the planet itself. Stars blinked out one after another across tactical displays. Fleet scanners lost depth perception. Communication arrays collapsed beneath waves of static so dense that entire command systems rebooted automatically. Then the gravity shifts began. Warships thousands of kilometers apart suddenly drifted sideways against all known orbital mechanics. Debris fields froze motionless in space before reversing direction entirely. Dominion targeting systems malfunctioned under contradictory calculations while human vessels moved through the chaos with terrifying precision. Ethan stared at the tactical projection in disbelief. Earth itself was distorting the battlefield. Not Earth. Something beneath Earth. The calm human voice returned across every active frequency. "We buried this part of ourselves because we were afraid of what survival had turned us into." As the transmission continued, the oceans below began glowing brighter than the cities surrounding them. Massive energy fractures spread across Earth's surface in geometric patterns while the black towers rising from the seas activated fully for the first time in 6 centuries. And suddenly every human fleet moved as one. Not coordinated, unified. The neural war network no longer transmitted commands or battlefield data. It transmitted emotion itself. Every pilot, soldier, medic, engineer, civilian defender, resistance fighter, and fleet commander felt each other completely now. Pain flowed through the system. Plus. And because humanity shared the burden together, no individual mind broke beneath it. That was the secret the galaxy had never understood. Humanity's greatest weapon was never rage. It was connection. Dominion officers watched in horror as human soldiers continued fighting through wounds that should have killed them instantly. Crews aboard burning warships held formation even while entire decks decompressed into vacuum. Pilots whose nervous systems were actively collapsing kept flying because millions of other humans were carrying the fear with them. No conqueror in galactic history had ever encountered a species capable of surviving psychologically as a collective organism. The Harbinger had not transformed humanity into monsters. It had removed the loneliness from suffering. And suddenly the Dominion began losing everywhere at once. Across occupied systems, conquered species launched synchronized uprisings coordinated through hidden human networks established years earlier. Dominion supply lines collapsed completely. Frontier fleets mutinied after learning entire command sectors had already fallen. Several occupied worlds switched allegiance openly mid-battle after witnessing human fleets protecting civilian evacuations belonging to enemy species. Hope became contagious. The Empire began dying from it. Above Earth, the Ascendancy made one final push toward firing range. High Executor Malvek stood motionless aboard his command bridge while battle reports flooded the chamber around him. Entire divisions gone. Orbital sectors collapsing. Human fleets surrounding the Ascendancy from every direction despite catastrophic casualties. And still they kept advancing. Malvek finally understood why the ancient Dominion emperors had sealed the historical archives centuries earlier. Humanity did not defeat civilizations through superiority. Humanity infected civilizations with defiance. Once another species witnessed humans refusing extinction, submission became psychologically impossible forever afterward. The galaxy would never fear empires the same way again. A strategist approached him desperately. "Executor, the planet killer array is ready. We can still fire." Malvek looked toward Earth on the viewing screen. The blue world burned beneath orbital warfare. Continents glowed with emergency evacuation zones while shattered fleets drifted across near space in endless fields of fire and debris. Billions had already died during the invasion. And somehow the humans were still trying to save enemy civilians trapped inside collapsing combat sectors. Dominion escape craft damaged during battle received rescue escorts from human pilots who should have hated them beyond reason. Medical ships broadcast open sanctuary frequencies to any surviving non-combatants regardless of species. The humans were winning, and refusing to become what the Dominion had become. Malvek closed his eyes slowly. Then he gave the order no Dominion commander had ever spoken before. "Stand down the array." The bridge froze. Several officers stared at him in disbelief. "Executor, that is not a request." Far below, across the synchronized neural network connecting humanity together, billions of human minds felt the shift happen simultaneously. The Dominion had stopped. Not because they were forced to, because they chose to. For the first time since the war began, the pressure inside the Harbinger network eased slightly. Human fleets slowed their advance. Weapons remained locked, but firing patterns weakened across multiple sectors. Then Commander Elias Vorn transmitted one final message across every surviving channel in the Sol system. "This ends now." Silence followed. Heavy. One by one, Dominion warships powered down their weapons. Then more followed. Then entire fleets. Around Earth, the greatest battle in human history finally began to die. Hours later, Ethon stood aboard the shattered remains of the Sovereign Claw while human marines moved silently through the ruined command decks around him. Fires still burned across the vessel. Emergency lights flickered weakly overhead. Outside the fractured observation windows, Earth hung in the darkness beyond, surrounded by wreckage from both sides. Commander Elias Vorn entered the bridge slowly. Ethon studied him carefully. This human did not look triumphant. He looked exhausted. You could destroy us now, Ethon said quietly. Vorn nodded once. Yes. Then why stop? For a moment, Vorn simply stared at the burning stars outside the ruined bridge. Then he answered, because survival is not the same thing as becoming. Ethon said nothing, because somewhere deep beneath the fear and ruin and collapse, he finally understood what the Dominion had truly failed to comprehend about humanity from the beginning. Humans were dangerous because suffering sharpened them. Humans were terrifying because extinction united them. But humanity's true power was that after all the death, all the rage, all the centuries spent preparing for the galaxy's return, they still chose mercy. Weeks later, as Dominion fleets retreated from liberated systems across known space, millions gathered beneath Earth's recovering skies to watch the shattered moon hanging above the planet like a scar that would never fully heal. The Harbinger towers sank slowly back beneath the oceans. The neural network deactivated. Human minds separated once more. But something had changed forever. Now the galaxy knew the truth hidden beneath humanity's softness. The old empires looked toward Earth not with contempt anymore, but with fear. And somewhere far beyond Dominion territory, deep in the oldest regions of unexplored space, ancient civilizations that had once hunted humanity awakened after centuries of silence. Because the signal from Earth had reached them too. Humanity had survived again. And this time, the galaxy had reminded them what they were capable of becoming.
This is the true HFY power of the story. Humanity wins not because it's the strongest, but because it survives horror without surrendering its soul. Athon learns that humans can be sharpened by suffering, united by extinction, and still chose mercy when destruction is within reach. This is why the galaxy fears humanity, not because humans are monsters, but because they know exactly how close they can come to becoming one, and still step back.